Hello, I'm Adam Shaffer, and I'm the president of Phelps United. We're a brand accelerator helping brands accelerate and navigate their business on Amazon um, and other marketplaces, but Amazon being the largest marketplace, we spend much of our time talking about Amazon. We're currently managing over 1,500 products from 30 different manufacturers, and we're in 10 different product categories. Today, we're here to talk about our holiday gift return survey, which we ran a few weeks ago. And we surveyed about 600 people, and we'll get into that in more detail, but it was really telling and surprising in many aspects. Today, we're with Scott Baradell, founder and CEO of Idea Grove PR agency, to discuss our findings. Scott is the author of a new book called Trust Signals, Brand Building in a Post-Truth World. Hello, Scott, and welcome to the show.
Thanks, Adam. I'm really happy to be here.
Hey, Scott, I really appreciate you being here. This book is quite interesting, and it's, kind of interesting how it comes to play with regard to returns. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and the book?
Yes, well, I came from a journalism background and then went into public relations, corporate PR for many years. I've had my own PR agency, Idea Grove, for 18 years now, and I looked at how people come to trust brands. PR used to rely on kind of just mostly media relations, and I started thinking it's not really about the tactic of media relations so much as what you're trying to achieve with that, which is trying to earn credibility and trust in your brand. And so I started looking big picture at it. And so wrote this book, Trust Signals, that said, yeah, getting media coverage is one great way to get credibility for your brand, but there's a lot of others. And if you start thinking of them all together, you can think about which ones are best for your brand. So in that context, e-commerce sites have known forever that if you put a badge on your checkout page that says free returns, then you're more likely to close that deal. You're going to have less cart abandonment. Same for money back guarantees. Same for having a Norton security seal or a Better Business Bureau seal. These are all examples of what I call trust signals or little evidence points that you're using to tell that buyer to reassure them that they can trust you to do business with them. And so that's why we thought, I know you and I thought this was a really interesting topic, what's been happening with this topic of returns and easy returns or flexible returns this holiday season, which I think has been taken for granted. But now some retailers are kind of rethinking their approach to returns this year.
That's for sure. And, you talk about trust signals, and do consumers trust who they're buying from, and do they trust that they're going to be taken care of all along the way? And that's one of the huge benefits of why people buy on Amazon, is because they feel this trust that, if they get it and something's not right, they could return it. And there's not a lot of friction there. There's not a lot of pushback. It just happens, and it's automated. And so, one of the many reasons people do buy from Amazon, but nobody likes returns. And as a seller, and we're a seller on Amazon, and we're an agency on Amazon, nobody likes to get returns, but it's really important, if you want to have long-term value for customers, that they need to be able to know that if something is not right, whether it's not working or it's just not what they wanted, that they can return it and not have to go through pain, suffering, and possibly fees. And I think we were both seeing in the media that there was a lot of talk about big box stores, other online sellers now potentially charging customers to return their products. And we're kind of at the holiday point right now, not to try and date this too much, but this is the time when you're going to see the most returns. And so we put this survey together. I mean, you helped with their survey. I mean, tell us a little bit about the survey and how we got this organized.
Yes, well, we used a tool called Pollfish, which is a really effective tool for polling and getting surveys of different demographic groups or broader audiences pretty quickly. We looked specifically in this survey at individuals whose families had a disposable income of $50,000 a year or more. Um, that was the main pre-screening we did on it. It's a pretty good reflection of kind of the general consumer population. 600 people about half and half men and women, and most demographic groups is pretty sorted in keeping with the demographics across the country. And what it came back and said was a couple big insights. People are returning gifts and expect to. And the majority, 52%, said they expect to return at least one gift. And many said they expected to return more than one gift. So it's become.
I expect my family to return everything I buy them. I don't think I've never nailed it ever.
Well, it's just I saw a Consumer Reports survey from I don't know 10 or 15 years ago, and I believe the number was more like a third. So it's definitely been a something where more and more people just come to expect it, which I know can present more of a burden to retailers. But the other side of that is it's it's a reason why there's way more e-com purchases than ever before. It's because of this kind of sense of reassurance. So, it's short-term gain versus long-term brand damage potentially if you say, well, I'm going to have stricter return policies so I don't lose money on all these returns. Well, that might cost you next year and in the years ahead because the overall volume has gone up. So the survey asked people about, hey, do you expect to uh, return gifts this year? How many do you expect to return? What kind of gifts do you expect to return? But it also asks things like, what do you think? How important is a return policy to you? And more than 3/4 of respondents said they look for and they study the return policies when they purchase a gift. So that's important. And they also said they look specifically for things like free shipping on returns and things like being able to return to a physical store for e-commerce sites that allow that or enable that, or just things like having a return shipping label included, just things to make it more convenient. All of those things, people in the survey said they look for and they really value. And if that's the case, you've got to think about what if you didn't have those things? What if you were the retailer who said, no, there's going to be a restocking fee, or you have to return it in 48 hours? Another of the things that came up in the survey is people said they liked the flexibility to not have to return for 30 days, which is a pretty common policy. And it's also one of those that's come into question, and more retailers are saying, 30 days is too long a window. However, those same people in the respondents said the great majority returned their gifts by a week after Christmas. So they just like the flexibility to be able to return in a month. The great majority are returning much sooner than that. So how much are you really losing by being really
offering the
strict
big
on that?
window? Yeah, no, I think you open the window up because they're not returning it. You get some flooding in, but not that many.
Right.
But again, like it's a tough thing because retailers are struggling, trying to make money. The pressure is definitely on the margins for sure. And what do you do with all these returns that they get? It's not that easy. There's a cost to take it back. There's a cost to reprocess it, and then can you sell it as new, or do you have to sell it as refurbished, open boxed, used? And so there's a lot of rules and laws about that. And there's a large volume as the volumes increase online. But when you're buying for other people, it's hard. When you're buying for yourself, it's hard to get it right all the time with sizes. But when you're buying for other people, it's very difficult.
I know that something I've seen a lot of coverage on recently is this idea of bracketing, where someone, particularly with clothes, and our survey showed that clothes were the most returned gift, is that it's not uncommon for someone to buy 3 or 4 or 5 in different sizes or different colors with the intention, I'm going to return 4 of these 5.
That's my wife.
So the question is, would you rather have that or not have that as a retailer? I'm curious, Adam, as someone who's been an expert in this space and around e-commerce for a really long time, overall, what have you seen in terms of what's happened with returns, and what has been your advice in terms of, based on evolving consumer habits, should there be or has there been an evolving of how retailers respond, and how should they respond to these changing habits?
Well, it's a great question. It's a difficult question
Yeah.
because I'm on both sides. I'm a consumer and I'm a seller, and I'm helping brands. And like I said, nobody likes returns, but how do you keep customers coming back week after week, month after month, year after year? And that is, having lenient policies really makes it easy. You do need customers to not be abusive, and so the bracketing kind of stinks a little bit,
Yeah.
but you need to tell a story online and in the retail store, but online more so, to make it as easy as possible for people to figure it out and understand, is this the right product for me? Is this going to solve the right problem I have? And is this going to fit? And you need to do that with imagery, video, um, copy. You need to look at reviews and address people's reviews when they have complaints to make sure that you're addressing, does it work with this? Does it not work with this? And the more upfront you could be, the lower your return rates will be. You also need to understand, if you have low quality products, you're probably going to get higher returns, and
Yeah.
so quality in the product is quite important, because people get it and they go, wow, I didn't think it would be like this. This is a little, you know, cheesy, or a little, low end. I thought it was going to be different. So you got to be fair. You got to be open. You got to give great information on the either the Amazon product page or your Shopify website or wherever you're talking about the product. And the more video, the better. The more close-ups, the better. The more it works with this and it doesn't work with this, the better. But I think by not letting people return their products, you're going to wind up going back and forth and having issues with that customer. It doesn't just end with, okay, I'm not going to return it. They're going to try and, maybe stop the charge on the credit card, and then you have to go back for the charge back, or they're going to wind up putting a bad review, and it's going to wind up hurting future sales. So if you want good reviews, if you want to not have that overhead of having to go back and forth with customers, figure out how to take the products back and figure out an outlet for you to be able to sell and maximize what you can get from those products.
That's a really good point. It makes me think of, the fact that if you're really smart about in your product pages, how you're describing the product, having how-to videos, having imagery that maybe shows something from all angles and gives someone really a lot of confidence in what they're getting. It would obviously, you would think that there's going to be a smaller return rate on something I buy for myself than on something someone buys for me, because I know what I want more than someone who's buying for me. So I wonder if the gap between the rate on returns on a gift for a product versus when it's purchased by themselves, if the difference in that gap, if I'm probably over making this too complex, but if the difference in that gap reflects how good that retailer is at explaining their product and what they do. In other words, it's not going to help me as much, help me some, but won't help me as much in giving you a gift to have all that information at my disposal. But if I'm buying it for myself, if you provide me enough information, unless I'm doing something like bracketing, if I'm really just trying to buy the right gift in the right size, if you're providing me enough information, that should dramatically reduce my return rate,
It
right?
does. Definitely more so for yourself,
Yeah.
because gifts are still, you think you know the person and you think you know what they're going to want, and it could be that they just, you told your great story and people just like, I don't want this, I want this. And that's what happens here in my house. I mean, you know like I said, I never really nailed it. I buy stuff and then secretly it goes back and they don't tell me, and then I see something else a couple of weeks later, so they don't hurt my feelings. But sometimes it's just not what they wanted. And in some cases they'll buy it again and not return it, but in many cases they'll return it to buy something different. And so I think the first point, and the first kind of insight that we learned from our survey was that consumers are more likely to return than not. That was it. And you had mentioned a 52% number, was that right?
That's right. 52% of respondents said they expected to return at least one gift.
That's it's more than half the people, man. That's a lot of returning. So that's why there's a lot of action after the Christmas holiday. I mean, people are returning stuff and hopefully buying more stuff and buying even bigger stuff, which is another part of returning. You're hoping that when they return things, they are buying, and they're buying bigger. And that happens quite often. So the return season is a big deal, because you're going to get some incremental sales. but you got to get the stuff back, and you got to separate the good from the bad and resell it again.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that you had also in the survey, you said it showed that 68% of respondents expected to receive at least three gifts. And 25% were saying five and even 10 gifts or more. So if you're expecting, if that much of the gift giving is happening online, gosh, if only one is returned, you're doing pretty good, right? Because there was a fair amount of respondents who said they expect to return three or more or five or more.
And I know people are going to retail much more now after COVID than ever before. I mean, like, it's really fun to go out again and see things, but at the end of the day, I think a lot of us are still buying online. Like, I really don't go, and not just looking at myself, but so many people I know are not going into the big retailers and waiting online and trying to schlep around the store. They just buy it online. And whether they're bracketing or they know what they want, they're buying online. So huge, and I think what's great is that there are a lot of retailers that are hybrid, that are selling online and they're selling retail, and so it gives customers a lot of options.
Well, the something that's been happening for some time now, known as showrooming, is something a lot of people are doing now that they're going to the stores. They're not necessarily going to the stores to buy. Maybe they want the experience of going to the mall and so forth, but they might, unfortunately, what we see at a lot of retailers is they're still struggling with staffing, and they're still struggling with training the staff, say at an electronics store, places like that. And in the past, whereas you used to maybe you go to a store and expect to have all your questions answered, um, you know, to your point about having a lot of good information on a product page, you're more likely to get the information you need to feel confident about a purchase online than at a physical location in many cases. So it would lend to, hey, let me go see what this looks like, but I'll go ahead and research it and buy it on Amazon.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm 100% there. We'll go see something, and then we don't want to deal with the wait in the store. We go back home and buy it online. And a lot of times, is it for the better price? Sure. Definitely, you can go online, you can find a better price. But sometimes it's just I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to carry it out of here. I don't want to, I just want it delivered to my place, and so that's a big deal. Um, what's also big online right now is picking it up at the store, so you can do curbside. And we go to Dick's Sporting Goods a lot, and we'll buy it online, and then we'll go there, and it's waiting for us, with the salesperson out, side handing it to us, so we don't have to go in. Love it. I think it's nice.
Yeah,
Target
that's
does
my
that too.
wife's favorite. Yeah, my wife loves to do that too, as my credit card has shown. But but I'm thinking about this larger issue of just kind of, are you going to accept consumer habits that are changing tied to technology or not? It reminds me way back, like one of my first PR clients was an app that ultimately had 40 million downloads called Shop Savvy. It was one of the first barcode scanning apps. So back in the day, like 2007, 2008, you'd take your phone and you'd scan the barcode on a product in store, and it would shoot back a lot of results. And it might say, what's the same product cost on Amazon or on the Walmart down the street or whatever. And when this first started happening and getting media coverage and notoriety and so forth, there were actually stores like Target and others that when they saw someone doing it, they would literally kick somebody out of the store. I'm like, that is not a sustainable reaction to
No, not at all.
technological progress, right? And I think staying on top of the trends, I think it's one of the ways that you are helping the companies and the brands you work with.
Well, what I'm worried about is if everybody plays hardball and charges customers to return products, it's going to leave a bad taste in customers' mouths. And some will deal with it, some might not return it at all, some will return it and take the pain. Some, and maybe more than some, are going to do some bad things. They're going to leave bad reviews, both on the product, because people will do it on the product, and they'll do it on your store. You'll do it on, if you have an Amazon store, they'll do it on your seller account. If you have your own, online shop, they're going to give you a bad review. And to try and undo those bad reviews after all the effort and time it takes to get reviewed these days, I mean, it is not easy to get reviews, because you have to be, you know, again, on your own Shopify site, you could be a little bit more risque to get reviews and ask people for positive reviews and incent them to do it. But on Amazon, you have to be incredibly careful about not asking people to leave good reviews, but to leave reviews, and you can't incent them in any way to do it. There are programs they have to help you, but it's very, 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 very hard. And you earn those positive reviews. You get a couple of bad reviews, it is awful. And you know, when the UPS guy drops it in the mud and you get a bad review because that's like it drives me nuts and you got to work to
Yeah.
get that review taken off, and there's a lot of effort that goes into that too. But you know, it's got to be worth it to take the stuff back than to destroy your brand and your business by getting one and no star reviews.
It's so true, and Amazon has taken so much grief for fake reviews. I think they had said it. There was a study a couple years ago that said that, like, in the electronics category, for example, there was an estimate that like over a third of reviews were fake, and so as a result, Amazon has really worked hard to stamp those out and to
Oh,
to crack
they
down on
police it.
those.
It's still there, but they police it a lot. I mean, they've thrown billion dollar brands off of Amazon, born on Amazon brands, and for messing around with that and violating their terms of service. And there's no coming back. So
Yeah.
what do you do when that happens? Game over. So you want to play it right. You also want to be ethical and not do that. So for the bad guys to try and do that kind of stuff, you know, bad things will happen ultimately. And if you play it straight, might be a little more difficult, but you'll learn it.
The FTC has gotten involved too, and I think they gave a $5 million fine for the first time for what's called review gating, which you were alluding to, which is only asking people with positive experiences to leave reviews. And there's a brand, a clothing brand, that was basically, when people were leaving negative reviews on their website, they would just not display them and would only display the positive ones. So there's a lot, people rely so much on reviews for their
Yep.
decision making today. To your point, you have to do everything you can to get positive, authentic reviews, because it's an area that's under a lot of scrutiny today. And there's no shortcuts. You either give a great experience and get authentically great reviews, or you're going to suffer the consequences.
And our strategy and what we advise our brands, our customers, our clients, whatever you want to call them, we try to explain like, look, it's part of this business, and here's the risks for not having a fair return policy. If you're going to play hardball, it's going to hurt the brand. Let's figure out how to remarket your stuff and take as little of a haircut as we have to on these returns. And so we offer a platform for them to be able to sell the returns again as either renew, which is an authorization on Amazon to sell high quality refurbished products, or we'll sell it as you know used, or almost as good as new, but we'll show the quality, we'll explain the condition, and we sell it for them. We try to alleviate the pain.
Can you talk a little bit about kind of your two models of kind of selling for
Sure.
versus kind of
I'm
serving as
glad you
like an
asked,
agent
Scott. I
versus like an
wanted to say
agency?
that.
Well, and I'm
Yeah,
also
well,
curious about, in the two models, if there's any difference in terms of, like, or nuances in terms of things like return policies when you're taking on the burden of going out and selling it versus when you're serving in more of a consulting or agency role.
so the agency is quite easy. I mean, we're an agency. We're usually managing a brand store or their business on Amazon in general. We're not buying their product. We're not taking any risk in buying their product. We're managing their advertising, their content, their customer service, their logistics. We're doing all that for them turnkey, and it's their store, or it's their business. So that we advise them to take the returns back, but it's really their call. Um, when we're buying and selling it, we need to take the returns back, and we'll work out some kind of either a return back to the brand or some kind of allowance from them for us to be able to discount the products when they come back, so we can sell them as renew, refurb, or used. And so um, whatever the case is, it's almost always better than them having to get it back. So the allowance is usually the area they go to, but the buy and sell model is the most popular with brands because their motion of selling a lot of stuff to a seller or to a retailer is much more normal for them than selling one and two at a time and dealing with all this reconciliation.
Um, that's really interesting, and I know that I don't want to get into the weeds too much, but I think a lot of just consumers and folks would be interested. What is when it comes to a return? What is the standard at which something has to be sold at like a refurb or discounted price versus can just be resold as new?
It depends on how it comes back. When if an electronic product, once it's opened and it's the seal is broken, you're supposed to sell it as open box or um, not new. So you have to be really careful. It's got to be mint condition, unopened, and you do get a lot of returns like that. People just get it and send it back, buyer's remorse kind of stuff. And those are the best returns because you just sell it again. But once they open it, you got to inspect it, make sure that all the parts are there, make sure that it's in 100% working condition, and then you have to remarket it again, but usually as an open box or, like I said, refurb. When it comes to clothing, it might not come back in the same exact bag, but if it's completely unused and the tags are there and you could tell it's never been worn and you know you could repack it and sell it as new for the most part. But once it's worn or dirty, it's garbage. You're gonna have to throw it out. You're not gonna sell that, or you're gonna donate it. So clothing is a bit different.
And so I don't want to get too technical, but I'm just actually very curious about it. What's the process for determining like something has been worn or something like, is there
Oh, I
physically
think everybody.
there's an
I don't think
individual
there's
who
any.
goes through it?
Yeah, I don't think there's any one standard, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't think there's any one standard. Um, like with the bathing suits, they'll have this like tape in there, and once the tape
Hmm.
is gone, it's used, But they inspect the products, and it's company by company, and whoever is inspecting it, and if it's all good and not worn, I mean, I think with shoes, it's people that smell them. It's like it sounds bizarre, but there's smellers that smell this stuff. I'm not really making this up. I wish I was, but uh, it, you
I'm
know,
just I'm drawing a mental picture. I
yeah,
don't know
no.
if I
So,
want to.
but if they're scuffed or something like that, but I mean, you have to be really, really, really careful about it because the last thing you want to know, like, I mean, I've purchased things and I could tell it was opened before and used
Yeah.
before, and I get really upset about it, and I'll try and send it back immediately. So you don't want to have a return that keeps on boomeranging back.
Well, it's such a well, if you tie that back and just to have a little empathy for retailers who would feel like they have to be stricter is if someone is bracketing and they try on 4 different bathing suits or something and keep one and send the others back, you're saying potentially those others might not be able to sell them again.
Potentially. Yeah,
And
no, it's,
so
it's tough.
yeah, so but you're saying even with all those things being the case, on balance, having a more generous or flexible return policy is going to pay off in the long run.
Yeah, because I think a lot of those clothes, as long as they're not really like worn and they're tried on and they're put back, like you go to the store and you go to the rack and you go to the dressing room and you try it on and it goes back to the rack. It could be 100 times in a day and it's still sold as new. So it's like if it's
Yeah.
worn or it's indications that it's used, and I'm not the tester, so I don't exactly know, but everybody's got their own litmus test for it. And like I said, it's not standard with electronics. Hard goods, it's a little easier because if it's unsealed, it's used or it's open
Hmm.
box.
Yeah.
You could say never used, as good as new, but it's not new.
And if it's just an open box, nothing else, you have to typically what knock 20% off, or does it vary widely?
It depends,
Yeah.
20% is probably um, a good start. It could go
Yeah.
more, but I'd start at 5 or 10% and work my way down over time.
Okay. Well, somehow I dived into all these things that would scare retailers about giving generous return policies, but keep your
Well,
eye.
what,
Yeah.
what, what stinks is, I mean, it's just like there's a lot of abuse. So here we
Yeah.
are talking about you got to take the returns if you want to keep your brand healthy and people happy and people leaving good reviews. So it's like a bit of a, it's a tough go. But when people abuse it, it's really frustrating. And so if there's a way to identify the abusers, and some of the Amazons of the world do know who the abusers are. They have good algorithms for it. They have huge return rates per purchase. They look at their purchase history. Target and the others know some of the abusers. Um, to try and keep those guys off, that's probably worth it. It might still get you a bad review, so you got to be really careful about that. But um, there's the story where family bought 3 sets of cleats, football cleats, for their kids, and they returned them, and in the return were 2-year-old cleats with mud and stuff on them that they were just upgrading and getting the new pairs for their kids and sending back the old ones. And like, that's kind of, to me, kind of disgusting. And
Yeah.
you're hoping people behave, because the retailers need to behave and do the right thing, and they need to do the right thing also. So you shouldn't be trying to game the system, because that's where the increase in all the prices are going to come from. It's like the insurance business. The price, somebody's got to pay for it.
Right. Exactly
So,
right.
so going back to the survey,
Yeah.
I think one of the other insights we found is that timing, and you had mentioned it earlier. That was a big deal for me. Like, we all think that people need months to be able to return this stuff, and it's really not true. But we determined that more than 2/3 of consumers return their gifts the first week of Christmas. I mean, that, it makes sense, but maybe it doesn't. Like, I thought, people need 30, 40, 50 days to return stuff because they're so busy, but it's not true.
Well, I know when I was growing up as a kid, I don't do this, but when I was growing up as a kid, my family, my mom, we had a ritual every year. We went to the store, we went to the mall the day after Christmas every year to return stuff. I just thought that was part of Christmas, is on the December 26th every year you went and returned stuff. So I was kind of grew up used to that. But what's interesting, I thought, is like this juxtaposition is in the survey, when asked about what policies people were important to people, 58% said a flexible window of 30 days or more on returns was important. But to your point, 69% said they plan to return gifts, um, by the first week after Christmas, and that includes 15% who said they would return gifts the day after Christmas, like my mom and my family used to do, or even before Christmas. So people get their Christmas gift, they get it through Amazon or say before Christmas, and they open it before Christmas and they return it before Christmas. So 15% of respondents said they did that, but overall, almost 70% said by the first week after Christmas, say basically by New Year, they will have returned any gifts they're planning to return. So, which is probably more in line with these stricter policies
So,
that people want to enforce.
but it's great
So,
marketing. I mean, like
yeah,
you were saying earlier. I mean, like, 60 days, 30 days, 60 days. Only 7% of the people are returning their stuff after 2 weeks. So it's like, make it broad, because human nature is going to only, really give a very slow or small amount after the 2-week period. And 2 weeks is incredibly fair, I think. For you
yeah,
not to give at least 2 weeks is, I think, pretty ridiculous. And to tell you the truth, like, I don't know if you go to some of these smaller boutique retailers, when you do go to them, many of them will say no returns or store credit only. It's like, how does that work? I mean, I get so nervous to buy gifts. Like, buying for myself, maybe, but buying a gift from somebody who's no return to store credit only, I'm scared to death to make that a gift. Like, what do you do? And so
yeah.
I do think it's really important. And I don't want the world to think, oh, this guy just loves giving returns. We don't. It's just, it's like part of the game. It's part of the business, and you got to figure out how to deal with it and dispose of it, but not stop it from happening. And like I said, prevent it up front with great copy, great imagery, great video, and having a lenient policy. You're still going to get all the returns in the same time period, but take them back. Don't ruin your rep.
It's interesting. I'd love to understand a little bit more about what you do and what you counsel regarding, what are best practices now in terms of on that product page, say, making sure every important question that buyer has is answered, so to increase the chance that they're going to buy something they're going to keep. You mentioned video. Is that something that's emerged just more recently? And what kinds of video work best?
Video's always been important,
Yeah.
but it's more important now than ever in having more than one video. So a short form video to show the product, the size, and it in use is a big, big deal. I think a how to even install it, if you have to install something, is really, really important. You got to have that. How to maintain it is maybe a third video if it's something that is an appliance or something that you have for a while. With clothing, it's showing it in every angle on people, on different size people. So not just the same model over and over and over again. Different, heights, different widths. People are different and they want to see what it looks like. And, which one of those models is more like them is
Yeah.
helpful. But the size of things, I mean, I don't know how many times I've ordered something, like I've ordered a ring or something, and I get it. I go, what? I can't even read it. Like I was supposed to have an inscription in this thing. It says, to my beautiful baby Abigail, I love you. And it's like, where is it? Like, get me a magnifying glass.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
showing that, like, and many of the people use the hand, or they'll use a coin, or they'll put a ruler. These are really helpful things to show the size and comparison. I think there's nothing better and nothing more important. But you got to have some kind of short form visual, showing all around the product and show it in use. Um, Show people installing it. It's as simple as 1, 2, 3, or maybe it's not as simple as 1, 2, 3, but show them so they know what they're getting into, and then some kind of maybe troubleshooting. Some of these don't have to be Hollywood productions. They just need to be simple. Somebody maybe taking a PowerPoint and showing the product at the same time. So there's words and there's a visual. It helps. I barely read the manuals that come with anything anymore. I try to go to
Right.
YouTube and I try to go right away. I mean, I'm building everything here that we buy. Like nothing comes assembled. To me, it's kind of fun. As you can see, I like Legos. I don't know if you can see my rocket behind me, but
Yeah.
I love to build this stuff. But you get some of these instructions, you go, wow, I can't even read this. And so the video is really, really helpful, and that'll keep it out in the field. So once people start trying to assemble something and it's hard, they're going to return it. So make it easy. Um, Super important. Um, one thing is, I said it earlier, tell people what it's not. And I know that sounds like anti-marketing because you want everybody to believe your product, solves everything and, it will save you from cancer. But a lot of products do one thing and one thing only, and it's not for everything. And one product that I ran into because we go to Europe often to see family is the power adapters, power converters. So here it's 110, there it's 220, and if you plug your hair dryer into the wall from the U.S. in England or in Europe, it'll pop, it'll blow, it'll be gone. The second you put it in, there is no saving it. So
Mhm.
there's these power converters that either bring it down from 220 or in the from Europe to here bring it down, bring it up. So um, but it doesn't work for everything. Like so, you'll see now on the advertisements or the product pages that this product works with, you know, a radio, an iPhone, a computer. It does not work with hair dryer. So there's a big X. Do not use hair dryer. Do not use, curling iron. You can use these, don't use these. And it must have been painful for the first guy to ever do that, but the returns were probably off the wall. And people were angry because they go, what is this? It's a power converter, it's supposed to work. But I can't use my hair dryer. No, you can't. And there's things that you can use a hair dryer for, but it's these bigger things. It's not these smaller little portable things. And they learned a valuable lesson, and now they, for the most part, put a couple of images that have big X's. Do not use it with this.
Well, that's such a very important point, and we deal all the time with clients that when we ask them about their target market, for example, well, they say, "Oh, our product works for everybody."
Yeah,
Well, then it works for nobody in terms of actually having a target that's going to feel like it's for them, and that's kind of an example of that. What you're describing, it when you are upfront about the things that you're not good at or your product is not good at, the things you do say it's good at, people are more likely to believe,
absolutely,
right?
sure,
And so you're actually, it might sound like, oh, wait a minute, I'm now people who have hair dryers won't buy this. But the other people who you're going to serve better anyway are going to feel more confident. Well, they've told me what it doesn't work for, so I know for sure it's going to work for what I've got.
And let me tell you, that hairdryer person is going to be really angry at you when they
Yeah,
blow their, because you ruin the appliance. It's gone. The second you plug it in, it pops. It's over. It smokes, and it's done. So you wind up getting bigger issues with companies coming back to you or people coming back to you saying, hey, you owe me for my hairdryer. You don't want to, how do I start dealing with that now? So you don't want to deal with that. um, it's a big deal. So I kind of think we drifted off what we were talking about, but I think you got to make sure that you're telling people what your products do and don't do, and be really open and honest. Growing up with marketing, it was, how do I sell as many of everything as I possibly can, and buyer beware. And now it's, no way, you don't want that.
absolutely right.
So the one of the bigger insights that we learned from our survey was that when people are shopping, are they or are they not looking at the policies that resellers or online sellers or Amazon sellers have, or retailers in general, big box, do they have? And the return policy is actually important. Like, people look for that when they're buying. Like I mentioned, I go into a store and they don't take returns. I'm scared to death. Like, I might still buy it, but I, you know, good chance I'm not going to buy it because I am scared what happens if whoever I get it for, or even if I get it for myself, I need to return it. And I don't want to go through the hassle arguing with the store owner, or, I mean, nobody wants to deal with this stuff. So,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on our, our final insight on our survey?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was a high number. 76% said they typically review an online retailer's return policy before sending a gift. So it's something that is not only important in terms of providing information to people, but it's clearly, I think, evident that it's a deciding factor in many cases in whether someone's going to pull the trigger on a purchase or not, if they don't like what they see there. So you better have information there that's going to, make people feel comfortable
Comfortable, yeah.
and trust you enough to go ahead and pull the trigger and seal the deal. And I didn't expect the number to be that high. I expected it to be the majority, but 76%, that's a lot of
It's a big number. And
that's
that's
a lot
why
of
so many
yeah.
people buy on Amazon and Walmart.com, or Walmart the store, or Target, or Home Depot. I mean, when we buy from Home Depot, it's easy. We go and we return it. Or, the biggest issue that retailers have and sellers have is that, how do you get the products back to them? And people really don't want to spend, if they didn't want to spend money on shipping to get it to them, they definitely don't want to spend money on shipping to get it back. So again, who pays for all this stuff? Well, you got to kind of build it into your margin, I guess, because people don't want to pay for that product to go back. They want you to take it back. Amazon, for the most part, there are sellers that have different policies, but they make it so easy to print the label, take it to the UPS store, and have it go back. But once you start saying you got to pay $15 or $20 to send things back, but there's a real cost of that, guys. I mean, like, there's a real cost. Shipping is not cheap. I don't care if it's US Mail, UPS, FedEx. I mean, shipping has gotten so much more expensive, and that's why retailers don't want you to just, they don't want to help cover that cost. Maybe they'll take it back, but they want you to pay for it, and that gets people angry if they don't know about it.
Yeah, I'm curious about probably like a lot of consumers. I don't understand fully kind of where Amazon ends and the third party Amazon sellers begin in terms of some of the policies and things. I'll give you an example, real life example. Just happened this in the last month with my wife. Is uh, she had bought a trampoline for our kids, and I guess it was through a third party seller on Amazon, but it was through Amazon and Amazon Prime, I think, and everything. And so we got it and we're going to set it up, and we realized we got one that was too big, so we needed to get one that was a size smaller. And so we started this process of, we're going to return it, and we're going to return it at a Amazon location nearby in town, because it's really big to stuff it in the minivan and all that. And then we got an email from an Amazon seller, not Amazon, saying, "Hey, is there anything we can do here? Like, can I give you a discount? You
Yeah.
know, I'm like, gosh, we'd love. I mean, it just doesn't fit between the trees, you know, or we would love to accommodate it. But yeah, we were surprised to get this email beseeching us, hey, can we work something out?
Well, m- let's put it this way. There's 2 million sellers on Amazon that are not Amazon. And of those 2 million sellers, some are very small, mom and pops, some are much bigger, resellers of brands that are selling there. And 67% of the gross merchandise value that gets sold through Amazon is from these third-party sellers. So the
Wow.
majority of the sales, not the way Amazon records their revenue, but
Right.
the gross merchandise value gets sold through these third parties. And so they make
What percentage of just consumers or Amazon customers would you think would know that or would be surprised by that?
I think
I'm surprised.
everybody's surprised when they hear it because they always think, and that's just the beauty of Amazon is Amazon. So you're going to get the Amazon guarantee no matter what, and that's why that seller's reaching out. They so don't want that return because it's so costly for them
Yeah.
that they want to figure out how to keep it in the field. So you bought it from a seller, but you bought it with Amazon's terms and conditions, so you could return it. There might be a restocking fee. It might not be a restocking fee. Depends on the seller, but for the most part, they got to take it back. And you might have to pay for shipping, you might not have to pay for shipping. Each one has their own rules, but for the most part, Amazon is going to make you take it back, and they want to leave it in the field. So if they can
Yeah.
offer you 20% off than having to take it back, why wouldn't they try and do that? They don't want that
Yeah.
return.
And we are buying another one from them that's just their next smaller size, but still it's a
Yeah, no,
transaction they'd rather not do.
and it's tough. The bigger and bulkier the product,
Yeah.
the more painful the return. And it's part of the model. You got to do everything you can to keep it out in the field. I don't think there's any one thing that is solution. There's all these little things we talked about that try and knock it down. But could they have done something in their visuals and video to show that it was going to be too big for you? And I don't know. Maybe they could have. I haven't seen it.
Well, yeah, it's an education. It's a very interesting space, and I can but complex, and I can certainly see why if I had something to sell and I wanted to use Amazon, I would want an expert in this space, an expert in e-commerce buying and selling to help. So that's probably a service that a lot of people are relieved when they find you.
Yeah, well, like, I'm glad you brought that up too. So, coming to the end of the survey, we realized that if for brands to be successful, most likely they're going to have lenient, return policies, and Amazon definitely has lenient return policies. So, what you need to do is, I hate to say embrace it, but do everything you can to minimize it with all the good stuff we talked about, but then have a good way to sell through your returns, your refurbished, your used stuff. And working with companies like ours, Phelps United, I mean, we would help you sell through that stuff. And so you need to have a great outlet for that. We're a great outlet for that because we'll help you remarket that product on Amazon or other marketplaces or other e-commerce sites. So, that's one way to work with us. I mean, that's the ugly part of the business, but we're there. We'd love to help people up front so they can minimize that. And so, whether it's buying and selling and marketing your products on Amazon for you and doing the advertising, or it's being an agency or helping you with your aftermarket, we're there for the full life cycle. So, our ask is reach out to us and, contact us, and we'd love to talk to you guys about it.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's a probably a time of year where, particularly after the holidays, a lot of retailers that are having struggles of different kinds will want to be finding some help for next year.
Yep, not just returns, but trying to accelerate their sales and navigate Amazon. And shipping is going up and storage is going up, and the marketplace is getting more crowded. But $610 billion of gross merchandise value a year gets sold
Wow.
through Amazon, and it's
Wow.
hard for you to ignore it. And if you ignore it, somebody is going to figure out how to sell your stuff on Amazon and potentially hurt your brand. So, find a good partner to work with because it's hard to be great at everything. You might be great at making a product, you might be great at advertising, but to deal with the full gamut of all the things you need to be great at on Amazon and Walmart and all the other marketplaces, it's hard, and we're here to help. So with that,
That's right.
I think we should try and wrap this thing up. And I wanted to thank you so much. I really enjoyed talking to you about this. And I recommend everybody get this great book that Scott has written. I want to write a book. I mean, I can't believe you have the time and the brain power to do that. But that book is Trust Signals: Brand Building in a Post-Trust and a Post-Truth World. Brand Building in a Post-Truth World. And I recommend everybody pick it up.
Well, thank you. I've really enjoyed the talk.
Okay, Scott.